How can you be that selfish? Ouch, right? Have you ever been the recipient of one of those comments? Or maybe you've even judged yourself about being selfish, or judged someone else about being selfish. Hi, my name is Tracy and I'm a self-relationship coach. And I realized after years of working in social work and being in the professional and personal development world as a coach that I didn't really love myself. I didn't have a relationship with myself. There were times I accepted myself, and this was all incredibly difficult after years of childhood sexual abuse and really struggling with my identity. And I realized that a lot of my failed relationships and whatnot were due to how I looked at myself, and that I didn't have a relationship with myself. And what does that mean, right? We are the one person we can't get away from. So you might as well learn to like yourself and develop that relationship for yourself, because again, that is the one relationship in which all others stem from. Whether it's relationships with your spouse, your children, maybe your creator, definitely with yourself. It's a lifelong relationship that deserves your full attention. So, beloved, are you selfish? What does that even mean? Maybe you're selfless. You're in the other end of the spectrum, right? Both ends of the spectrum, selfishness and selflessness, can be equally harmful, but somewhere in the middle where we find most things is the balance and what we can look at. So today we're going to do just that, right? So when we look at self, right? Self is defined as a multifaceted concept, an individual's essential being, identity, and consciousness from others, right? And in that, when we are going about in the world, especially if you're an empath or you're just not sure about yourself, we can give our energy away. We are made up of energy, and when we don't know how to keep that to ourselves and with ourselves, and we give that away or give our power away, then we are giving away pieces that make up who we are, and thus we make decisions from those places. So it can be incredibly difficult to not know who you are, or have pieces of yourself out there and make a decision from the wrong place. And you deserve to know yourself intimately. And that's an ever-changing and ever-flowing journey, right? It is not, the concept of self is ever-changing. So if we look at a psychologically definition of this, it's self-concept, the sum of physical, mental, and emotional traits that have two primary functions. One, executive functions that regulate behavior and decision-making guides based on our personal values and our beliefs. And organizational function, helping individuals process information and recognize patterns in your own life. That can be hard to do if you're not present with yourself, right? So a relationship, by definition, is how you relate to others and how you relate to yourself. How do you see your inner child? How do you see yourself? How do you see your higher self? How do you see your creator, God, consciousness, Allah, whatever you might call it? That is a relationship in all parts of yourself. And even more important, if you have different values and beliefs and they're just not lining up with how you see yourself, everything is going to feel disjointed and not in harmony. And it can be very difficult to make decisions for yourself, to even know what you want. So if you're trying to manifest a new life, a new being, how can you manifest that? Or how can you know if you don't like yourself and you don't really know what you like to do, what your strengths, what your weaknesses are, all of those components that make up how we see ourselves, that self-concept, however you might define identity or self. So some philosophical definitions of self include the ego, or the uniting principle of experience. And in some traditions, including Buddhism, self is seen as an illusion because it is not permanent, right? It's always changing. And if you're evolving and changing, then you're always going to want to be growing and not being stagnant. So you want to be fluid and always growing and expanding. So that can be things that you were told as a child, that you believe that that's who you are and you try to make changes out of that. But that's always going to be in misalignment, because you need to grow and adapt with not just the way the world is going, but by what you want. Every day you are manifesting something, some type of life. And if you enjoy being a conditioned version of yourself, then that's what you're going to get. But if you want to be your most best self, your authentic self, whatever that means, and only you can define that, then you can make those changes in knowing who you are, that you are an extension of God. You are God's source. You are creator, co-creator of your own world and reality. And out of that is what you want to manifest in those changings. But every day, who you are, how you operate, what you believe and feel is showing universe, God, Allah, what you want to manifest. So in order to really get a good grasp of what you want and who you are, invest in yourself, invest in knowing yourself. And that can take selfishness, right? What others call selfishness, and in the living of the life that you want. But if you are on the spectrum of selflessness, always giving yourself away to others, that's when you're giving those parts of yourself, unless you're bringing it back and centering it upon yourself through daily practices and routines to help you remember who you are, who you've decided to be, to embrace, to embody. Then it needs to be, the selfishness needs to be brought more into the middle, because self-care, which is where selflessness and selflessness meet, right? How you care for yourself, whether or not it's going to the doctors, whether or not it's going to get your hair cut and keeping up with how you want to look, to just knowing that you can't give away that in which you don't have. So if you don't love yourself, yeah, you can love others to a certain extent, but not to the full extent that you could be. The relationships you have with others are just the external, the outflow of how you feel about yourself. Oftentimes in other people, what we love about them is what we love about ourselves. And the same goes with what we don't like about others. Something we don't like about ourselves. But you can do something about it. Where it becomes dangerous and harmful and selfishness is when it starts neglecting yourself, hurting yourself, or neglecting and hurting others. So obviously if you have children, you have a commitment and a duty to them, but you also have to find ways to take care of yourself. And for me, my mission, my whole reason for doing this is getting the definition of self-love and sharing it with the world. And to me, if you don't have that relationship with yourself, not just knowing and accepting parts of yourself, knowing you need to change, but a relationship, talking to yourself, checking in with yourself, all of these pieces, this is how you build self-love, getting to know yourself and getting to know how you show up, why you operate a certain way. Because when you were born as a unique individual. You have a special design. You can choose to stick with that design or not, but we're not aware of that. And then we become conditioned by trauma, by experiences that tell us who we are, who we need to be. But you get to change that, right? You get to change that. And that is the most powerful thing, because then you can change the relationships around you. So beloved, I'm going to share some journal prompts here. And I really want you to check in with yourself. And how do you feel about yourself? And have you taken on what other people have said about yourself? How do you relate to yourself? And really see how some of this will help you check in with yourself and change your trajectory of things naturally. So thank you for being here. I can't wait to see how your journey of self and self relationship unfold. And I hope you have a fabulous day. When you get to prompt number 3, it's about knowing where to adjust selflessness and bringing it up the scale, or selfishness and bringing it down the scale for balance, as every day is going to have different needs for you to adjust to support you on your journey.